3 similar scenes, all written by the same writer, all with the same purpose. So why does one fail so hard while the others soar? This is Doctor Who. More exposition wins and woes. As people seem to enjoy my last exposition video, I thought it'd be fun to once again explore that little thing that drives every writer mad. Doctor Who is chock-a-block with exposition. It's the nature of the beast. With only 45 minutes to tell a twisty time travel story, writers need to work incredibly hard to get all the information across quickly without it being a boring slog. Today we're diving into 3 scenes, each one written by the Welsh wizard himself, Russell T Davies, to examine how each one deals with exposition through character, plot and tone. We'll also look at why 2 of them work so well, while the third leaves audiences feeling pretty cold. So, the scene in question. The Doctor decides to open up to his new companion/friend, telling them that their planet is gone and that they aren't just a Time Lord, but instead they are the last of the Time Lords. In doing so, a weight is lifted off the Doctor, while the companion now understands their new friend a little better. The scene I'm describing is the closing moments of The End of the World, the closing moments of Gridlock, and the opening scene of Space Babies. Now, there's no prizes for guessing which one doesn't work, but I want to explore why. How can 3 very similar scenes, each with the same plot beat and outcome, be so different? Starting with Planet gone, I'm alone. That's the information. That's what the exposition needs to get across. You can fill these scenes up with fancy dialogue and Shakespearean acting, but at the core these scenes must establish people are dead and I am sad. And it sounds like I'm purposely taking the piss, but this is actually how I teach exposition when working with writers. Break it down, write the information in the most basic, almost sarcastic way possible, because then you see exactly how it will come across if written and delivered badly. The End of the World waits until its final scene to deliver the information. It builds up slowly throughout the episode, with Jade the Tree hinting towards something sinister and sad about the Doctor's home planet, but it's not until the adventure is done and they're back on Earth that we as the audience are finally told the truth. It's written and delivered very matter of fact. There's no bells and whistles with this scene, it's just a character opening up for the first time. It's so simple that this scene, which could end if you wanted it to with soaring music and tearful glances, instead ends with the characters going to get some chips. And when I say simple, I don't mean that as a bad thing, it's a simplicity of this scene which makes it one of the standouts of the series. But this isn't information overload. Instead, Russell uses one of my favourite ways to disguise exposition, by shrouding it in mystery. Leaving the audience with a question is just such an effective way of engaging the viewer. We are told that there was a war, but when Rose Tyler asks a war with who, she is met with silence.
With who?
Suddenly, a question mark hangs over the whole scene. She realises he's not ready to talk about it yet and moves on to another question, leaving us to wonder. The mystery is set. And when I put it like that, it sounds so simple and easy, doesn't it? So let's jump to Space Babies. The information in this scene is a little more cluttered, not due to story purposes, but because it feels like the show is ticking off a list of things they think the viewer needs to know before the adventure can begin. In this scene we are told about Gallifrey and the Time Lord's names, such as the Rani, the Master, etc. We're told why the TARDIS is a police box, that it travels through time and space, that the Doctor's home planet is gone, and quickly after that what TARDIS stands for.
That's a lot of information to get in 30 seconds.
We'll talk about why all this information is unnecessary a bit later, but for now I want to focus on why it feels so odd. And it's because none of it feels right. Ruby's reactions and questions seem unnatural because this isn't a scene where she's a normal, curious girl who's been swept up in the madness of the Doctor's life. Instead, she's the mouthpiece of Disney, who is spouting out the questions they think new viewers might have. And sometimes there's not even a question. The Doctor tells her what TARDIS stands for completely unprompted. He just says it.
Stands for time and relative dimension in space. Huh?
She's staring at a dinosaur, and instead of letting the magic and the whimsy of the show speak for itself, immersing the audience in Ruby's amazement, we're just told more information. It is a checklist. Honestly, the best bit is probably this one line.
Gone! Ruby, it's gone. It's gone.
Mainly because it's driven and delivered with some emotion. However, we'll get into why this still doesn't land in a bit. Gridlock's information is slightly different. End of the World and Space Babies are both at the beginning of a new era, meaning that audiences expect a bit more exposition to help set up the show. Gridlock, however, is episode 3 of series 3, meaning the show already had an established audience at this point. But, and I think this is something writers sometimes forget, especially when writing a show that follows a story of the week format, new viewers will join throughout, and you do sometimes need to catch them up a bit. Gridlock kinda acts like a catch-up. If you started with series 3, which I imagine quite a few people did, this is a great scene to get you up to speed. However, that is not its main objective. Because Gridlock goes one further. The information of the war and him being the last of his kind is all there, but instead of stopping like it usually does, we linger on this moment as the Doctor monologues about the beauty of his home planet. We get to hear him speak about it in a way we've never heard before. This isn't just a I am sad, this is a I am fucking distraught, I'm homesick and lonely. It's incredibly moving, and this emotion helps hide the fact it's basically information regular viewers already know. Also, of course, Martha doesn't know this, so this isn't unnecessary in that way either. Everything in this moment works and makes perfect sense. Also, it's full of character. Sticking with Gridlock for a bit, mainly because it makes my editing so much fucking easier, Gridlock's exposition is driven fully by characterful moments and interactions. This starts from the first scene after the opening titles. We get a lovely little moment between the Doctor and Martha in the TARDIS. God, I miss scenes like this. I feel like we barely spend any time in the TARDIS now, which is insane when you think about how much the new set must have cost. But anyway, I've gone on a tangent. I've tangented. This scene is brimming with dramatic irony, and I love it. If you don't know, dramatic irony is when an audience knows something that a character doesn't. One of the greatest examples of this is from the story of Oedipus, who leaves his home after hearing a prophecy that he will kill his father and marry his mother, not knowing that he was actually adopted, setting the prophecy in motion. Here, Martha asks to go and see the Doctor's planet Gallifrey, and this moment is just lovely because it hits. A viewer feels the Doctor's pain. And then, he lies. Doesn't tell her why they can't go and instead hides behind his fast-paced, frantic facade. All of this is also characterful and also helps hide the ending exposition through the story, because the final scene isn't just a rinse and repeat of the Doctor once again telling us that his planet is gone. Instead, he has to admit that he lied. He's made to feel bad and kinda silly. The exposition, the information, isn't the end goal. Instead, it's the driving force for their first real connection as friends. He has to open up to her. Information as story. I love to see it. Also, the build up to this allows us to learn more about Martha. She's brave. She is happy to go against the Doctor, to sit around and force him to talk, even though she knows he could just take off and leave her on this strange planet. And then, as soon as he tells her the truth, she softens, showing a very understanding and sensitive side too. The scene from Space Babies unfortunately doesn't really tell us anything about either character. Ruby Sunday slips into the stereotypical companion, asking questions and pulling expressions of wide-eyed wonder while the Doctor just rattles off information like a shopping list. Nothing he says feels secretive, nothing feels that it means that much to him. He doesn't feel like he's connected or affected by anything he's saying, apart from this one moment.
Gone! Ruby, it's gone. It's gone.
However, this isn't earned. Ruby has not earned this information. Martha had to wait a few episodes before basically having to force it out of the Doctor, while Rose, in the end of the world, has to watch Earth burn before the Doctor tells her. I know 15 apparently went to rehab and got therapy and now loves life and sees beauty in everything, but this comes out of nowhere. He says this far too easily and then moves on, but not because he wants to, not because he's trying to run away from the truth. He doesn't do that anymore, remember? He had a picnic with Bonnie Langford and is now cured. But instead because the information has now been given so we can move ahead to the next thing. It feels incredibly rushed and for that reason tells us nothing about them as people. Also, there's no mystery to any of it. This line,
It was a genocide and they died.
that's just fact. We know what that means, so there's nothing to explore there. I do wonder if new viewers thought this would lead to more, because can you imagine watching this for the first time
There was a war and we lost.
and then never finding out more about it? That'd be odd, and that's kind of what happens here for new viewers who didn't watch the Chibnall era. But anyway, we don't learn anything new about these characters, we don't see an interesting side of their personalities, which is very different to the similar scene in End of the World. I would say that this scene basically establishes the Doctor and Rose's relationship going forward. Their care for each other, their friendship, it is all there. Firstly, the whole episode tells us so much about the Doctor. He takes his new friend to see her world blow up and thinks that's a fun day out. He's a fucking nutter and I love him. He's a man who's numb to it, the darkness, the death, it's just such a part of his life he doesn't stop to think how it may affect Rose. He's almost desensitized to it all, and then in the last scene we find out why. That's lovely, that is so good. And we learn so much about Rose here as well. She spends a lot of this episode annoyed at the Doctor and feeling out of her depth, but as soon as the Doctor opens up to her, she's there for him. And at the end, they get chips, they have each other. It's simple and perfect in every way. The End of the World and Gridlock share a lot of similarities between the final scenes, but also as episodes as a whole. Both explore the Doctor and Companion's dynamic and the realisation that they have just ran away with a complete stranger. Both episodes split the Companion and the Doctor up and put them in extreme danger. That rhymed. Both feature the death or the near death of a planet, with New Earth under quarantine and all those above the motorway being dead, and with planet Earth blowing up. And of course, both end with the Doctor telling the Companion that he is the last of his kind. And I think this is the reason both final scenes work so well, because they thematically connect to the story we've just watched. We spend 40 minutes with Rose coming to terms with the fact that planet Earth is dying. The whole story is about the loss of life and the extinction of a whole race of people, with Joan Rivers claiming to be the last of her kind. So this ending isn't just a twisty reveal, nor is it just tagged on at the end. Instead, it's almost an epilogue to the tale we've been following. And the same can be said about Gridlock. The episode basically starts with the Doctor lying to Martha, and then what follows is a story that features people hiding their true feelings and emotions, a planet that lied to those trapped on the motorway, and an event that almost caused the entire population to be wiped out. And the final scene captures all of this. The Doctor has to admit to lying at the beginning and then goes on to explain how he became so alone in the universe. Yeah, we could have had the Doctor tell Martha about Gallifrey in the Shakespeare Code, but it wouldn't have linked to anything in the story. It would have felt like we'd paused to deposit information that she needs to know, rather than feel like a natural conversation and conclusion to an episode. I do think sometimes writers go on about theme a little too much, but here you can see when theme is done right and everything feels connected, it can be an incredibly powerful tool. And tonally it all fits too. 2 episodes that explore death and the end of a civilization ends on a somber note about the Doctor being the last Time Lord. It all fits, everything feels purposeful. So much so that it doesn't feel like exposition, it doesn't feel like information being deposited. Instead, it feels like the only possible ending. Space Babies ends on a spaceship farting. It also has the Doctor talk about genocide, a monster made of bogies, the Doctor refusing to take Ruby to the church that she was left at, a nanny system that bleeps out swear words, children being grown and abandoned, and the weird Sugar Babes reference that doesn't work because they cut a scene from the beginning. However, I would argue it wouldn't have worked either way. That's my opinion, I'm just saying. Because tonally, this episode is messy. And I'm not saying that you can't play with tone, that you can't change things up to disarm and shock an audience, but that needs to be well crafted. And Russell can do that, by the way. I'm not saying he can't. It's a Sin will have you laughing one minute and crying the next. But Space Babies is just so cluttered with nonsense that the tone is almost non-existent. The opening scene of constant information feels tonally and thematically detached from anything else that follows it. And it's not entirely, the episode does try and link itself back to being the last of your kind, the only bogey left in existence, but it doesn't work. It feels forced because this exposition doesn't feel necessary, so calling back to it feels empty. Because his planet being gone is given the same amount of importance as Time Lord's names being posh or what the TARDIS initials stand for. It feels more like a fact that we're meant to remember than a moment we're meant to sit with. Also, and I'll never understand this, why is this episode and the series as a whole not cemented in its focus of growing up not knowing where you come from? Themes of abandonment and adoption and chosen family, and I know people will say it is there, but I don't think it's used nearly as well as it should have been. Instead, all of it is pumped into Ruby's mystery rather than the factor that connects her and the Doctor, and most importantly, things that inform her views and actions as a character. And again, this episode does try to do it too. It ends with her visiting her adopted family, but it's messy. It's not earned, and this opening scene, this checklist of must-know facts, doesn't connect back to it at all. I think for such a silly comedy episode, it is trying to do far too much, and due to that, every bit of information feels aimless. And when exposition feels aimless, it feels incredibly noticeable. And I think what's so interesting about looking at 3 very similar scenes by the same writer is it shows just how easy it is to get these things wrong, even if you've done it brilliantly before. I keep seeing Doctor Who fans online say that Russell T Davies is a bad writer, and I don't want anyone to think that's what I'm saying in this video. Nor am I saying that he's suddenly become a bad writer overnight. I'm not a fan of this era of Doctor Who, but he is an incredibly talented man, and I can't wait for his new drama on Channel 4 next year. But I think taking scenes from the same writer and studying why some work and some don't is such a good thing for new writers to do. Because although you can read the how to write books and all that, actually watching it yourself and being able to feel it as an audience member is so much more interesting and important. Because if you're writing to impress your other writer friends, then you're in the wrong industry. It's about how you affect and move an audience, what you want the young viewer to go away and think and play and dream about.
Do you dream about being an ambulance?
The end of the world and Gridlock scenes offer so much more for an audience. It offers emotion, intrigue, setup and payoff. Getting to hear the 10th Doctor speak about his planet like that is 3 years worth of build-up. The Space Baby scene offers nothing extra other than the very words that are being spoken, and that's why in my opinion it feels hollow. You get the information, but you're left asking, why should I care? I'm enjoying making these exposition videos, so if you would like to see another one, please do let me know in the comments below. Also, I'm getting ready to start work on my I Wrote a Doctor Who episode video, so you'll be able to start judging my writing for yourself soon. And if you don't think I've been harsh enough on bad writing this video, I've attached my monster review at the end, which is one of my longest and definitely my most angriest video yet.